Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us here today for this judiciary hearing here in Wisconsin. As I said at the outset, we've done hearings across the country. We've been on the border, McAllen, Yuma, Arizona. We've been to San Diego, and we came to Wisconsin because every state's a border state, and we're seeing the impacts. And boy, if there's anything that came out of this hearing today, it is how the federal government is offloading its responsibility on local communities. We heard it here in Whitewater, where you're seeing their schools are having declining standards. We heard from Representative Van Orden in regards to half the inmates at the, I believe it's the Oxford facility, are here illegally in this country. And so, as a result of the Biden-Harris border crisis, where they, on January 20th of 2021, said we're going to have open borders here in America, this is the result. And it's being dumped on local communities and taxing their schools, their healthcare facilities, as well as law enforcement. And boy, it just has to stop at some point because it is overwhelming America. And,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I don't know if anybody wanted to throw in a quick word. Fitz, if you wanted to just say
I
it.
just wanted to add one thing that I think that the testimony kind of underscored, and that is, once again, fentanyl needs to be a Schedule I narcotic. It is not being taken seriously, and until Congress moves on that, I think we're going to continue to see prosecutors across the state and across the nation they really don't have the tools they need to prosecute some of these cases, and that's something I think that was underscored in the hearing today. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question specifically for the Wisconsin delegation. If Trump is elected, day one, what do you envision happening to the people who are in these Wisconsin communities illegally? Do you envision immediate deportations? What are your thoughts?
I think one of the first things that should be done, and I think we should enlist local law enforcement in this because they have the most contact with people who have committed illegal acts here in this country. Look at Prairie du Chien, where you had this Venezuelan gang member. He should be deported. Those type of people should be first on the list, those that have committed. The second crime, the first crime was coming in the country illegally, but when they've committed that second crime, especially a violent crime, they should be gone immediately, and I think it's really important for the Trump administration to enlist local law enforcement because they'll be the most helpful in making that happen.
Can I,
Yeah, go ahead.
You can start with half of the population of the Oxford Federal Prison in my district. They're here and they're known to be here illegally. They should be deported immediately. What I find very disconcerting is that the Democrat Party writ large fails to acknowledge the fact that our citizens are being brutalized, that's kidnapped, raped, and murdered by people that should not be in this country to begin with, including a mother and her daughter who are in my district of Prairie du Chien, less than a half a mile away from where 4 of my grandkids live. So the mom was brutally sexually assaulted, the daughter was assaulted over a period of days. None of that needed to happen. So the Democrat Party, including the people running for office right now, need to clearly acknowledge their foolishness of their defund the police movement that has led to the disrespect of our law enforcement, that has led to the open borders by Harris, and now to all of the stuff that's taking place in the country. It lies directly on their shoulders. I just want to make that explicitly clear. It doesn't have to be this way.
A couple comments. One thing, we don't have to feel guilty about removing people who came here the last few years. On a 3-year rolling average, 850,000 new people are naturalized in this country every year. So if you want to come here legally, you can succeed if you're willing to wait. That 850,000 figure is the all-time high by a mile. When I was a kid, it was around 200,000 a year. Now we're at 850,000. So nobody has to feel guilty. Secondly, we have to deport almost all these people, because if we don't, we send the message to other people, as long as you come here and keep your nose clean, you can skip ahead in the line. That's an insult to the people who are doing it legally, and it's obviously a big burden on local municipalities, as well as changing our culture. So I would hope that President Trump will have to deport a lot of these people. Otherwise, it's just going to encourage more people coming here.
What would you do with the dreamers that were brought in maybe when they were too young to even know that they were raping?
I believe that a lot of those people have to be removed with their parents, right? I mean, that they were brought up from another country. I certainly know people in my own life, maybe they were American citizens but were abroad, missionary work or that sort of thing. Maybe they were abroad because State Department parents or whatever. It's not a big deal when they are brought back to the United States.
But the first thing that needs to be done is secure the border. It can be done today by the Biden-Harris administration. They can secure the border. Stop the flow right now. And then you go to the next step of those who came in immediately here over the last few years, many of them that knew that first of all, they knew it was illegal, but they also knew that the Biden administration was doing something that 70% of the American people do not agree with. So I think you need to start with the immediate, and then you work down from there.
As far as fentanyl, DHS says 90% of fentanyl they catch comes through ports of entry, and that most of the people are legal citizens bringing that over the border. What do you make of that, DHS?
That's misleading, okay? They catch the people who have fentanyl with them at points of entry. Because at a point of entry, they have the dogs or they have people check it. When you have people gotaways, which is not at the points of entry, they are sneaking in. They don't catch any of the fentanyl there, even though that's obviously where I think a lot of the fentanyl comes across, because they're between the points of entry. So that's always a highly misleading number. You understand why it's misleading? We catch people at the designated points of entry because that's where the Border Patrol is. If it's in the middle of nowhere, we don't catch those people sneaking fentanyl across the border because they're gotaways. So it's entirely misleading.
It has been used by this administration, what you just cited as a question. They've used it as their talking point to be able to try to justify to families like the Rockwalls of why there are so many kids that are dead across America as a result of the exponential increase of fentanyl that has come into this country. And all you got to do, I cited him in testimony today, Sheriff Mark Daniels down in Cochise County. He testified before this committee last year where he said the fentanyl deaths are directly related to the open borders that started on January 20th of 2021.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
The fentanyl kills the same way, and we know where the fentanyl ultimately is coming from, and that's the cartels. When we saw the switch from heroin to fentanyl because it was cheaper to manufacture, and so as the congressman said, that ultimately may be where it's being caught, but we still know people are bringing it across, and it's still a direct consequence of the border crisis that we have.
Representative Van Orden, I know you called out Representative Pocan and said, I did ask him
Whatever you're referring to, my good man.
And what he said was, he said he wasn't invited to this campaign rally. You know, why the taxpayer funding of this event? We're 11 days away from Election
This is
Day.
why. Because no one cares about the political statements of a washed-up kickball player, which is Mark Pocan. What they care about is that their moms, their dads, their brothers, their sisters, their cousins, their neighbors are dying of fentanyl poisoning, and Mark Pocan can't take the time to show up here. Neither can Gwen Moore, and it's pathetic. Like I asked the sheriff, they call 911. Do they ask what your political party affiliation is? No, they do not. When I asked the district attorney, do you ask what someone's political party affiliation is before you prosecute them? The answer is no. So knock it off. Knock off politicizing the deaths of our children that are being poisoned by the Chinese Communist Party. And you got some goofball who's in Madison who will vote for a shoebox with a D spray painted on it, talking crap, and he can't come here to help defend Americans' lives.
He
And
said
that's
he wasn't invited.
That's pathetic.
He wasn't invited.
Whatever. That's pathetic.
I'll answer it as the
Thank
person
you.
I'll answer it as the person who chaired the committee. So we have done multiple hearings, as I mentioned, and Democrats have not come to any of them that we did around the country. It was, I believe it was the same in Yuma. I don't think in San Diego that there was anyone that came from the other side of the aisle. It's really unfortunate. We want them to come. We want them to come and talk about this issue with the American people. They've chosen not to. In this Congress, this House of Representatives, since we've had the majority, we've went all over the country with a number of committees, including the Judiciary Committee, because we want to hear from the American people. And so the invitation was out there. This is a full committee. They could have been here if they chose to. They chose not to.
Why don't you think any Democrats showed up today?
They know this issue is so harmful for them at this point. They know this is the number one issue for many people across America. I mean, take a look at, just the fentanyl families alone, with 100,000 dying annually. They know the reason why their children are dead. And it's largely because of open borders. And they don't want to face those people. They don't want to face them. And they know this is the result of having open borders, and they're not facing up to it with the American people. They're hoping that the American people will ignore this on November 5th, and they will continue to be able to have power in Washington, D.C. I think they're in for a really harsh lesson, because for a lot of people, this is their number one issue that they're going to vote on. Think about the story in Whitewater with the declining educational standards that are happening there. You don't think that there's some families that are perhaps not traditional Republicans. They're looking really hard at voting for Republicans this year because of that issue. And the Democrats are running from it. But I'd also say President Trump has said in regards to this that he said that this is in effect malfeasance or whatever. I disagree with the president a little bit. This is intentional, because you would have stopped it already if you thought it was the wrong thing to do. They're continuing to allow open borders all the way up to the election here when they know it's an albatross for them. It's intentional, and it goes back to President Obama when he said he wanted to transform America. This is part of the transformation of America, and you see it happening right in Whitewater, Wisconsin, and many other places.
Last question.
I think that was the last question. Hey, thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I want to thank the committee members and the witnesses that came here today. Thank you for your stories. It is remarkable. As many times as we have done hearings, both in Washington, D.C. and around the country, the stories that we hear from people and what a powerful impact it is having. We just want to thank them for their stories. Thank you.